Hello, my name is Sandra Rosario, and this is my portfolio for TWC411 Principles of Visual Communication. I used PowerPoint to create my portfolio presentation today. My designs predominantly use the Gestalt theory principles of figure ground discernment and figure grouping to produce well-formed figures that are easily distinguished from their ground. We perceive what we view in two broad categories: figure or ground. The figure is perceived as object, while the ground is the object's background. Creating a well-formed figure involves using the similarity, proximity, common area, and continuation principles of figure grouping. It also involves using color and sharpness to create the figure-ground contrast used to achieve figure-ground discernment. When using all these principles together, a figure tends to be a well-grounded image that is strong, balanced, and easily recognizable. Our first project was to design a personal logo. The rough sketches of my personal logos varied widely from one another. I struggled to find the right logo that truly conveyed my personality. However, I found myself gravitating toward a more organic design. The first version of my comprehensive designs was not very good and had to be redesigned more simply. I realized I wanted to incorporate the organic elements from Logo 2 during my second revision, so I blended Logos 1 and 2 together using a serif font called Kelowna MT because I was interested in using the negative space that ran through the center of each letter in this font. I overlapped the S and the R in the center to create a unified figure, and I framed the figure in an enclosure to form a background. I chose the combination of Logos 1 and 2 as my final logo because it seemed to have the most potential for a successful design. To emphasize the figure from the ground, I slanted the logo in the opposite direction from the background container surrounding it. This gave the logo directional contrast that created energy and balance. I created leaves in place of the serifs to strengthen the leaf motif and the cohesion of the figure while adding symmetry and balance to the figure. While creating the leaf shapes, I paid attention to the negative space to create more leaf shapes in the center of the logo. This also strengthened the cohesion and balance of the figure while emphasizing the leaf motif of the logo. To add additional emphasis to the leaf motif in my final logo, I chose to outline the letters in a darker shade and to overlap the leaf forming the lower half of the letter S. This sharpened the lines of the leaves to bring them prominently to the foreground. For my final color logo, I chose yellow-green for the figure fill color, dark green for the figure outline, transparent for the figure background, and dark gray for the enclosure. I chose these colors because they complement the leaf motif and convey the meanings of growth and integrity. When adding my name to the logo, I used the Lucinda calligraphy italic font to slant my name in the opposite direction from the logo figure and the same direction as the background contained. This introduced additional contrast and balance through the repetition of opposing slanted elements, while unifying my name with the background. I kept the font size of my name significantly smaller than the logo figure to further emphasize the figure in the foreground and make my name part of the background. I chose to place my name inside the container centered under the figure to create a symbolic ground for the leaves and vines growing in my logo. Our second project was to design a newsletter. While creating my newsletter rough sketches, I experimented with different Mondrian layouts using the golden mean to achieve good natural flow of vision in my design. During this assignment, I found the principle of figure grouping was most useful for creating a successful newsletter design. I experimented with the placement of images, text, and headings to create proximity, similarity, and continuation using alignment, grouping, and the rule of common area. In my comprehensive designs, I continue to experiment with the golden mean and the Gestalt principles to achieve a well-balanced design. I eventually chose a format with a diagonal line because I felt it would complement the diagonal slant of my personal logo. My final black and white newsletter was a compilation of all three of my comprehensive designs. To achieve similarity and proximity, I grouped the same types of information together, such as the contact information and the table of contents. To achieve continuation, I also aligned the headings, bylines, and articles together. To follow the rule of common area, I placed the same newsletter elements together in their own area created by the diagonal lines and color blocks of the layout, assigning them their own home on the newsletter. Using these design principles gave me unified, well-balanced design for this newsletter. For my final color newsletter, I chose the same green and gray color scheme that matched my logo to give the newsletter an organic feel that blended seamlessly with my logo. For accent colors, I pulled the colors from the circular graphic image in the first article and repeated them in the font colors of the quote. I also repeated the shape of my logo in the table of contents and the shape of the article images to achieve balance. I staggered the logo shape diagonally throughout the newsletter to mimic the diagonal lines in my layout and give the newsletter a cohesive look. Our third project was to redesign a website. For my website redesign, I chose the Salt River Tubing website. As you can see, this website is going for a playful feeling that invites people to have fun and relax. I chose this website because I wanted to recreate the playful, relaxing feeling in a more refined manner. When creating the wireframes, I experimented with repeating different shapes in my layouts in a way that would express the fun, relaxing appearance that I wanted to achieve. I also used grouping and alignment to achieve the design principles of similarity, proximity, and continuation. I grouped the links together and used the same font to create proximity and similarity. I also used alignment to create a break in the continuation that distinguished between the website links and the title text. Using figure grouping was the key to creating a balanced website layout. I chose to create 4 comprehensive designs instead of 3. I kept each mobile design as similar to its website counterpart as possible. In my designs, I used blue analogous color schemes for a pleasant, peaceful feeling reminiscent of water. I also added warm accent colors of gold or red to bring contrast to the color schemes that brought energy into the designs. I chose to outline the title text in a contrasting color from the fill color and used shadows to sharpen the title text and emphasize it from the background. I also used continuation in the footers of my website designs by aligning like information into columns. I found that achieving figure ground discernment was a large part of creating a successful website design. In the next 4 slides, I will show the original website comprehensive designs along with the improvements I made based on the critiques I received. In the first 2 website designs that I created, I used the repetition of elliptical shapes to form inner tubes or bubbles that gave a whimsical sense of floating. Using the principles of similarity and proximity, I grouped these elliptical shapes together to distinguish them in the foreground as the website links. I also used thick, rounded sans serif fonts to complement the elliptical shapes in the themes. In my revision of Design 1, I added dark blue to desaturate the color scheme and applied the dark blue to the inner tubes to keep them from looking like black holes in the design. I also added transparent highlights and shadows to the inner tubes to sharpen the inner tube figures and distinguish them from the background. Lastly, I changed the white font to a gold tone color to add an accent color that brought interest and energy to the design. In my revision of Design 2, I added a curvy waveform outlined in gold to add contrast that emphasized the waveform and added a sense of motion to the design. This strengthened the sense of the foreground and background created by the overlapping bubbles in this design. I also made the font for the links smaller and less sharpened, so they fell toward the background and seemed to float inside the bubbles instead of hovering outside of them. These small changes added contrast that helped to distinguish foreground from background in these designs, resulting in well-formed figures that created a balanced, unified theme. In the second two web page designs I created, I focused more on images of the river that created a relaxing, inviting feeling. In Design 3, I pulled the colors from the inner tubes to create the color scheme. In my revision, I framed the image with an aqua blue accent to add interest and desaturated the yellow font for the title by changing it to a gold color. I also removed the menu bar and added gold menu dots to update the look of the web page. To create continuation and proximity, I aligned the title to the right and placed the menu dots on the right side of the web page. This also made the image of the river naturally lead the eye to the title and the menu dots. In Design 4, I pulled the color from the red hat in the image as a contrasting accent color for the title of the web page. I outlined the title text in a contrasting white and gave it a shadow to sharpen the text and bring it to the foreground. This red, white, and blue color scheme conveys freedom, while the image of the girl floating in the inner tube conveys relaxation. In my revision, I adjusted the aspect ratio of the image and raised the height of the text. These minor modifications gave the website a more expansive feeling that complements the free, relaxing feeling of the design. I chose Design 4 as my final design because I felt it most effectively conveyed the relaxing, fun atmosphere I wanted to capture while maintaining some sophistication. As a final revision to this website design, I chose to remove the elliptical frame from the image on the website to expand the view. I also lengthened the elliptical frame around the image in the mobile design for the same reason. I felt these minor changes gave the designs a more open, airy feeling that promotes freedom and relaxation. In summary, I believe my designs demonstrate how I've learned to use the Gestalt theory principles of figure ground discernment and figure grouping to produce balanced, easily discernible, and visually interesting designs. I learned how to use proximity, similarity, and continuation to achieve figure grouping. I also learned how to achieve figure ground discernment by using the elements of color and sharpness to create figure ground contrast. In addition, I demonstrated how to use repetition through the elements of color and shape so I could create balance. Last, I learned how to use the meanings of colors to further convey a message. As a result, I have a new way of looking at design principles and elements through their roles in creating well-balanced, cohesive designs. Thank you so much for listening to my portfolio presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.